Good evening. Tonight on KGQR, your leading news station for all of your top local and national news. Egypt cancels parley with Israel. Nixon is to make tour of Africa. Billions of dollars in losses estimated for eastern areas of the United States due to flooding. Flood victims deeply moved by the quick and generous rush of aid. These stories and more tonight on KGQR. Egypt cancels Israel parley. Nasser withdraws from conference over tension result of outbreak. Premier Gamal Abdel Nasser announced today that Egypt is withdrawing from its talks with Israel on the Gaza border tension because of the shooting incident Monday in which 3 Egyptian soldiers were reported killed and 8 wounded. Nasser told Cruzman he had informed Major General Edson L.M. Burns, UN Palestine Truce Supervisor, of Egypt's decision at a conference this morning, and also had sent a notification to UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld. Vice President Nixon is to make tour of Africa and Middle East. Vice President Richard Nixon will make a goodwill tour of the Middle East and several African countries later this year, probably around November. The White House announced of the trip yesterday stirred speculation that Nixon would seek to improve relations between Israel and the Arab states in furtherance of the American policy of seeking greater stability in the troubled Middle Eastern area. Diplomatic officials said, however, that the tour requested by President Eisenhower would have no particular policy purpose other than the development of friendship and goodwill between the United States and the countries to be visited. About 18 months ago, Nixon toured the Far East and South Asia, and earlier this year he visited a number of Latin American countries. On his Middle Eastern and African visit, he will be accompanied by Mrs. Nixon and representatives of the State Department. The exact countries which he will visit have yet to be determined. President and Chief Justice, guests of bar. National Gathering of Lawyers hears woman Senator decry court pressures, communist attitude scanned. President Eisenhower and Chief Justice Earl Warren lunched today with 4,000 lawyers in 5 special tents erected on the grassy mall in front of historic Independence Hall. They were guests of the American Bar Association, holding its 78th annual meeting, and today celebrating the 200th anniversary of the birth of John Marshall, who served longer, 37 years, and with possibly more renown than any other Chief Justice of the United States. Eisenhower arrived in Philadelphia by plane from Washington after an airplane inspection trip yesterday of the flood-ravaged northeastern areas. He was greeted at the international airport by 2 of his brothers, flood victims deeply moved by rush of aid. Rehabilitation of factories by volunteers marks New England developments. Major relief funds proposed. The worst confusion was clearing up today in flood-ravaged sections of the northeastern states, even in the most severely wrecked communities where life was still badly disrupted. There was new hope from President Eisenhower's promise of massive federal aid for rehabilitation. In sodden, prostate factories of Woodensagen, R.L. workmen energetically tackled the job of getting things in running order again. Management representatives were amazed and gratified by the turnout of volunteers for rehabilitation work. Then they state, "We knew some would turn out, but this is a happy surprise." Speedier flood warning plan given impetus. Recent losses sent efforts of federal government to improve forecasting service. Greater radar use seen. Weather Bureau officials say they expect great improvements in the next few years in ability to forecast disastrous floods, such as the one that hit the Northeast last week. They concede that as things stand now, they just don't have the scientific knowledge, experience, or facilities to foresee erratic extremes in nature. But Congress this year gave the Weather Bureau a big boost in funds, providing $40 million for the year, which started July 1st to the 15th. Much of the new money will be used for research on problems which have puzzled weather scientists, and which officials blame on part for the lack of warning. Some of last week's floods are a sign of that. Other funds will go to establish new facilities for getting more weather information and making forecasts. For example, much of the havoc from last week's extreme rainfall came from flash floods, arising within minutes or a few hours in small streams and headwaters. It would be impractical to station full-time Weather Bureau observers at every remote stream to measure rainfall and try to get out a warning. And meteorologists say that frequently there wouldn't be time to give the warning, even if an observer were on hand. One new project looks to far greater use of radar. The University of Miami in Florida will study improved methods of detecting rainfall on radar screens. Radar sets scanning a radius of 200 miles could spot extremely heavy rain or cloud bursts moving toward valleys and river headwaters where flash floods are likeliest. Advanced warnings could be given long before ground instruments could even record. Speaking of the flood damages, billion losses estimated for eastern areas. Governor places figure in flood damage survey at 500 million to $1 billion US dollars, and says US will provide $25 million in funds. Unofficial estimates of damages inflicted by last week's floodwaters in the eastern United States today approached the $1 billion mark. Following a tour of the flooded areas, governors said they could only conclude at the time that damages will be somewhere between 500 million and $1 billion. Leaders made the estimate yesterday after a meeting with President Eisenhower of other flooded eastern states. The governor said Eisenhower told officials at the conference he would ask Congress to appropriate $75 million for disaster aid to the flooded states. Nature's attacks on economy of nation cause heavy losses. Nature has been aiming blows at the economy in more than one section of the nation. At the same time, it is dealing out prosperity to others. To the human misery and great property damage in Diane's wake will be added disruption of much industry and a strain on the building materials companies, already plagued by shortages. In parts of the Middle West, hot and humid weather favored the corn crop for a while. But now searing and dry weather is reported blasting the hopes of many farmers who had looked for a better crop season. In the eastern states, hurricanes and floods ruined part of the tobacco and corn crops. The heavy rains, however, revived many seared pastures, bringing cheer to dairymen. West of the Mississippi, some areas have another story. Drought is killing pastures, and some livestock are reporting saying they may have to rush cattle to the market. Hurricane Diane's fury has dealt heavy blows to some eastern railroads, which won't be able to move much revenue freight for some time. Not only are their roadbeds gone, but also the output of many of their customers. The storm's destruction of factories, highways, utilities, stores, homes, and schools will bring a heavy call for building material. The great building boom already was straining the capacity of some of the building material producers. Spot shortages in cement, gypsum, and lumber have been reported as well, as in some cases, copper and other metal products. Prices were keeping up in some lines, and not so much in others. New England's textile industry previously combated the move of the mills to the south, which now is hard hit by flood and fire damage. The garment industry elsewhere may be disrupted for a time by delayed deliveries. To other firms in these industries that have factories and plants and sections that are untouched by Diane's horrible path, this may mean new orders, added pressures for deliveries. Let's go over to Ricky with weather and see if there's any signs of hope for better weather. Ricky. Thank you, Wally. Well, good news for not just the East Coast, but for the West Coast as well. The East Coast and the West Coast are kind of going to switch weather patterns this week, which is good news. The East Coast is going to get that much needed sunshine to help dry things out a little bit better after Hurricane Diane's heavy rainfall and devastating flooding. The West Coast will be getting some much needed rain to help with the high temperatures and drought situation that they're suffering over there. The middle part of the country will be mostly cloudy to partly cloudy. So, New York to Florida to Illinois. This week you will be enjoying some much needed sunshine. North Dakota, Nebraska, Colorado, Texas, you'll experience cloudy to partly cloudy weather with little to no precipitation. But you guys are doing just fine right now, so it doesn't matter either way. West Coast, Washington, California, Nevada, Mexico, you'll be getting that much needed rain and possible thunderstorms. Nothing too severe, and the rain not too heavy either, but just enough to get you out of the drought and cool you down a little bit. So all in all, good news for everyone. Back to you, Wally. Well, Ricky, that is very good news for both the East and the West. The East will be getting sunshine. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ozzy for a message from our sponsors. Thank you, Wally. Are you craving something sweet and delicious? If so, head over to Lloyd's Candy Shop, where you'll find everything and anything that will satisfy your sweet tooth. Candies such as chocolate bars, caramels, lollipops, even such brands as Nestle Crunch, Junior Mints, Reese's Pieces, Milk Duds, Dots, and many more delicious treats to fulfill your sugary needs. Back to you, Wally. Thank you, Ozzy. Boy, that sure makes me hungry. I must make sure to stop by Lloyd's Candy Shop for some sweet treats. I hope you do as well. That's it for tonight's news. From everybody here at KGQR, good night.